Let's speak with Brendan Chilton, Labour Councillor and CEO of the Independent Business Network. Brendan, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Is he the man that's turned the Labour corner?
Absolutely. I think the Labour Party under Keir's leadership is completely unrecognisable to where it was a few years ago. I don't think anyone can take that from him. The Labour Party is now, in 4 years, has gone from its worst defeat ever to being, in one poll recently, 30 points ahead of the governing party. And so I think all credit to him for achieving that remarkable turnaround. The speech he gave in Essex, I think, outlined the broad policy priorities for any incoming Labour government. Of course, Labour have still got to win the general election. We probably expect this now to come in the late autumn. No one wants a January election because everyone's exhausted after Christmas. So I imagine that will come in the autumn. And I think at that point, we are likely to see the election of a Labour government.
Do you think that he's ahead in the polls because of his brilliance, because of his political acumen, the inner antenna, his philosophy, his ideology, or is it because he's not Rishi Sunak?
I think it's with any opposition leader, it's a combination of all of those things. If you are the opposition, by definition, you're not the government and people are looking for change. Secondly, I think Keir Starmer has shown competence in leading the Labour Party and also a ruthlessness in not being willing to put up with those people that so damaged the party. And I think people respect that and say, well, if he can do that to the party in government, he can achieve an enormous amount. Now, is Keir Starmer the most, sparkly, dynamic, showman in politics? No. But we've had years of showmanship from, first of all, Boris Johnson. We had the month-long premiership of Liz Truss.
Oh, she was good. Come on, Brendan. She was great.
It was a certainly interesting period, let's call it that. It was like when you go out and have a rather heavy night, wake up the next morning and think, oh, my God, what happened?
Did I do that? Yes.
Yeah, quite often. But the point is, I think Keir's now in a position where people trust the Labour Party, and that's the most important thing. I think they look at Labour and say, actually, this is not a party we're frightened of. Many moderate voters that would have been sort of soft Tories or possibly gone to the Liberals now look at Labour as a party they can vote for. They couldn't do that under Jeremy Corbyn. And I think as the pledges that were outlined in Essex, they're very broad, they appeal to a lot of people. I don't think there's anyone in the country that would look at those pledges and think, oh, I don't agree with that or that particular pledge. They're a very inclusive set of policies. And of course, parties win in this country from the centre ground. These policies are centre ground policies from a centre ground Labour Party that has changed.
But aren't they pretty much kind of the same as any party's policy? I was going to say the Conservatives. I mean, who doesn't want to deliver economic stability? I said at the beginning, Brendan, it would be an interesting day when a politician stood up and said, I've looked at everything and I've decided I don't want to deliver economic stability.
Yes,
it's a bit of a platitude. I don't blame him, but it's a bit of a platitude, isn't it?
Well, perhaps we should do it just for a laugh and see what happens. But I think those pledges really stand in contrast to the experience of the past few years. And I don't say this to try and be partisan, but I don't think we can say the economy over the past few years has been stable, for a multitude of reasons, which your listeners are very familiar with, the mini budget, the highest levels of taxation ever. We're losing out in terms of investment to other countries. And so if we're going to have economic growth, the first thing we need is economic stability. So it might seem very plain and obvious, but actually saying that and saying this is our aim and this is what we want to achieve does stand in direct contrast to the mess we've had over the past few years. Similarly, on the border crossings, I've spoken many times to many presenters on Talk about the border crossings. I live in Kent. The government has continuously said we're going to clamp down on the boats, stop the boats. They make all the noise. But actually, I think it was last week, 1,600 people crossed the Channel illegally and came into the United Kingdom. And so the rhetoric is very different from the action. Yeah. Now, of course, is Keir Starmer going to come in and on day one the boats are going to stop coming across the Channel? No, of course they're not. You can't just click your fingers and make change happen. But actually strengthening the border force, working more closely with European counterparts is the right thing to be doing. Unfortunately, with some of the language that the current government has used, the relationship between the British government and European governments is not very strong at the moment. So perhaps that change will support reducing that migrant crisis in the Channel, which is, of course, a terrible trade.
Indeed. We will watch and wait with interest. Always great to have you on, Brendan. Thank you. Brendan Chilton, Labour Councillor, CEO of the Independent Business Network, with us here on Talk.